Now I know I planted red things and pink things and yellow things, but I don't think I planted that thing. Kitties, it's time to read. Hey y'all, welcome to the family that reads a lot. We've been reading a lot. This is what we've read lately, weekly kind of thing. Jump off at the beginning. My daughter is 8, my son is 11. We read lots of middle grades. I don't think there's anything in here today except middle grades. A lot of times I'll throw in stuff for me, adult fiction. There is, I guess, what would be considered upper elementary book in here today. So that's the kind of stuff we read. Jump into it. First book, Storm Blown. This is by Nick Courage. My son actually recommended this book to me. He grabbed this a while back, months back, at the used bookstore. Just kind of read the synopsis, grabbed it off the shelf kind of thing. Never had heard of the author or anything before. He read it and recommended it to me. This is what I would call a survival story. So this is about, it starts off with 3 kids. It's what would you call it? It basically is multiple perspectives. So you get each chapter is a different kid's perspective. And then you also even get what's going on with some of the different parents and things. But it takes place in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in New Orleans, and then even at I don't remember what they call it, but like the Storm Center, where the adults are working through stuff. So basically what this is it's fiction. It's about what would be the very worst situation of a catastrophic hurricane, like the worst of the worst. If you can think disaster movies, think like San Andreas or even Twister or something like that, where it's like the very worst of the worst and they throw in all the random things. That's what this book is. And you kind of have to go into it thinking like that and not nitpick it, which is always a little hard for me, but I love those kind of movies. Those are my favorite kind of movies. Really enjoy this style of book that's about natural disasters and what happens. So the different perspectives being from the different kids was interesting. You always have those people who, do the absolute worst thing that you could do, running out into a storm and stuff like that. So there's some of this in there, but overall it's a really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. Nothing overly like bad that I would worry about. I think there's a little bit of language in here. It's only been like a week or 2 since I read this book, but that's, it is what it is. But there was nothing overly bad in here that I would be super concerned about. It was a fun read if you're into that kind of thing. The next one. Okay, well, let's just go disaster story thing and just go in that direction fully. So the next one was one that I purchased off Amazon because I thought this might be for my kids. It is. It's Alone by Megan E. Freeman. So this is actually a book written in verse. It read really quickly because of it being written this way. So it looks like a thick book. It's not. Basically, the premise of this book is this girl sneaks out to have a secret camp out with her friends. Not camp out really, they're staying in her grandparents' empty apartment. But while she's there, I forget what they call it. Basically, there's an imminent threat on that part of the United States, and that town is evacuated. In the beginning, they kind of set it up for that a little bit. They talk about how there's checkpoints and things, and you have to be in by curfew. So obviously this is, something political or war or whatever going on, but they don't get into all the details. And so anyway, while she's asleep, the whole town is evacuated. Everybody is gone. So she is in this town all alone. And I mean, it's middle grade. She's 12, 13, somewhere in there. 12-year-old Maddie. Okay, so the whole town is evacuated and she has to survive. And not just for a little bit. She has to survive for a long time on her own. So it's her using her resources. You know, she is in a town that's evacuated, so this isn't survival like think of trying to live off the land, live in the woods. She's living off of the town that was left behind. So she has plenty of resources, and it doesn't get too hard into how to survive. A lot of it is her going through her situation. It's her talking about the emotions of it and things. It is her survival. There are a few things in here that if you have a young middle grader or a sensitive middle grader, or especially an elementary kid, like I don't think I'm gonna let my 8-year-old read this just yet. I think in a year or two she'll be ready for it. There are animals and things dying due to the situation. There's some animal cruelty by some people. Things that could be tough to sensitive readers. There's also the discussion of a girl becoming a woman and all that goes with that. So just to be aware that all of that is in there. I did not know that, I don't think, when I grabbed it. I'm not worried about giving this to my 11-year-old, that's fine, but some people may not be comfortable with that. So just want to leave that out there. You know, if you want to get into all the details, go pre-read it. You can always grab it at the library and pre-read it. It took me maybe 2 days to read this book. But overall, it was a really good book. It was a good story. It was interesting. It was fairly fast-paced. It kept you moving, kept you thinking. So as an adult, I enjoyed this book a lot. And if I need to see if she has other books like this, because I would definitely read them again. So that's Alone. The next, I'll just lump all three of these together. So these are what my 11-year-old has been reading this week. You're going to see a trend. Basically, these are all three Gary Paulsen books. So these two I'll for sure lump together. These are Brian's Return and Brian's Hunt. These are two books in the Hatchet series. He read Hatchet for school a year or so ago, and has continued the series as he finds the books. So Brian's Return is the fourth book. I have notes here, so that's what I'm looking at that he told me. He rated this a 5-star. He said that basically Brian returns to the city and finds that he's out of place. He doesn't fit in. He struggles to be around the other kids, stuff like that, after having lived in the wilderness for quite a while. Finally, he just leaves and goes back to the wilderness, and he's much happier there. And it's kind of the story of how all that takes place and his struggle to really conform back to society. These are books that my son really enjoys. They're super short, really quick reads. This one's barely over 100 pages, but he's enjoyed following the story of Hatchet and what all happened after the main book. The next one is Brian's Hunt. Same thing, it's in that same Hatchet series. This is Brian still living in the wilderness. There's a dog that's attacked by a bear that he finds and becomes a part of his life. But after he finds the dog, he figures out that there was a bear attack, and he goes to warn his friends that he made in the previous books. This is going to get a little spoilery, but I want to put it out there because just so parents know what's in this. He goes to warn these people. They're like trappers and Native Americans and people who lived there in the wilderness that helped him in the first book. And by the time he gets there, some of them have already been attacked and have died. So just want to put that out there because my son did say it was hard because in the first book you really got to know those people and they really helped Brian, the main character. So like this one he rated 5, this one he rated a 4.5, only because of the death of the characters that you really liked. So just want to make parents aware that it's a little bit heavier than some of the other books, which the pilot dies in the very first one. So there's death in the books, but he just felt like this one was a little bit heavier. He still enjoyed it. He still plans to finish the series, but just want to let you know that's in there. Okay, the next one for him, another Gary Paulsen. Same thing with the series that he reads. This is his favorite author, probably, I think, of all time now. This one is called Woods Runner. And so during the summer, he flies through these Gary Paulsen books just because he really enjoys what they're about. This one, I did not know, is actually a historical fiction book about the Civil War. So the main character in here is a boy living during the Civil War. His parents are taken hostage, or whatever you want to call it, by I think the Union Army. Yeah, because I think they're taken north, so they must live in Confederate territory. And it's the boy trying to rescue them is the premise of the book. He did say to let parents know that there is death in this book. The boy has to kill people to survive. So that's a much heavier topic than is in a lot of Gary Paulsen books. There's usually, he doesn't get squeamish of death or anything, but it's very seldom that a character has to kill another person. But this is historical fiction and it was a war, so that's the reality of what was happening at this time. So in that context, I don't have an issue with this, but just wanted to, same thing, let parents know that does happen in this book, so just be aware. He did rate it 5 stars. He said he really enjoyed it, even with what was content in there. Okay, the last book, this one, same thing, I pre-read for my 8-year-old. This is called Wonderland by Barbara O'Connor. I showed this in one of my book hauls the other day. This is by the author of Wish. I have not read Wish. I know it's on my daughter's to-be-read shelf. This, I believe, is considered upper elementary, like juvenile fiction. I don't think this is considered middle grades. Basically, the premise of this is you have the haves and the have-nots, really, because you have a girl, Mavis, who her and her mom have always been really poor. They've moved a ton. Her mom is not a very good role model. She's not settled, any of that. She's kind of aloof and just jumps from thing to thing. And they are going to, for her mom to work as like a live-in housekeeper for a rich family, the Tullys. And the other main character in here is Rose, the daughter of the Tullys. And so you have very different girls that have been thrown together. The mom of the Tullys, the mom Tully, whatever you want to call her, if you can imagine, what was her name? Emily Gilmore, the mom. Yeah, that's exactly who I would say the rich mom is in here. She wants her daughter to be perfect, but has no time to actually care about her or anything else. And so Rose has some anxiety issues that they don't come out and say that that's what it is, but she is a worrier, is what they call her. And she worries about everything. And so the story in the book is her kind of breaking out of that worry. The reason that I wanted to pre-read it is there's a gentleman in here who's Rose's closest friend, and his dog has died. So I was worried how that may have been presented, but it was totally fine, not a big deal. It talked about his grief and how, because prior to this, his wife had passed away. He's an elderly gentleman. And so it talked about grief and how he was really struggling with being left behind. I don't know that the kids reading this book will truly get that. As an adult, it was a really interesting topic to me, and it came through to me. Now, do I think an 8-year-old is really going to absorb all of what that's about? Probably not. She's going to understand a little bit, but she's not going to get the depth of what that is. Now, the only issues that I had with this book were Mavis is allowed to basically run wild and do whatever she wants, and Rose is very much not. And so Mavis is talking her into going against the rules a lot, and even into lying. At one point, I marked it, but I think Rose says something to the point of, I wish I could be a better liar like Mavis. I didn't love that part. But I did, my daughter asked me what I was thinking of it and if she could read it. And I told her, I said, you know, that is part of the book. And she's like, yeah, she's like, but you know that I know not to do that. And that sometimes that's just part of the story and that's what has to happen. And it's true. There has to be things going on that keep the story interesting. I don't love when a book just pushes the theory of it being good to lie to parents. So that was the only thing that I didn't love about the book. Overall, will I give it to her to read? Yes. Same thing. I think if you're gonna give this to your kiddo to read, it brings up to talk about it. She ends up not in trouble for lying. It never really comes to that, but it's more that the older gentleman finds out and he, you know, explains to her that that was wrong. So it is kind of discussed as being wrong, but kind of not. So I don't know. That was my only thing with the book. But other than that, it's a really good book. I'll give it to her to read. So, you know, I did some pre-reading. I'm encouraged that there's things that I can hand off to my kids. We've been reading. My daughter has been reading. I don't have any books from her this week. She's been in a big book for her. So that'll come next week because she's almost done with it, but she's not quite done with it. And I'm totally encouraging that. I want her to pick up these big, heavy books and not be afraid to take weeks or whatever to read a book. Like, it's not a contest. It's not about reading as fast as you can. So that's what I have for what we've been reading this week. We're going to keep reading. And from the family that reads a lot, y'all go read a lot now.